morning, everybody. Good to have all of you with us. This morning, we are continuing on our series, Spiritual Checkup or Prescription for God Health. Over the last couple of days, we've been aggressively dealing with how to rebuild your spiritual immune system that perhaps has gone down or taken a beating, but that's where we have been. You can always go on to the platform history and look up some of those. Yesterday we talked about how a lot depends on the individual, how we need to be intentional. We cannot for any minute think that going to a series of meetings, standing in a prayer line, going to, a particular person supposedly who has, the wisdom of God or the favor of God or the anointing of God, that will definitely change us. No, every one of those have their place, but their place does not substitute God's place. And it does not take away from the fact that we have to be intentional. We have to put in the work. And when we put in the work, we are rewarded. So we talked about how in the spiritual journey, it's just like in the physical journey of life. If you don't exercise, if you don't do simple things such as exercise, there are outcomes that become not a very good outcome. And so it is. There are spiritual exercises that we mentioned yesterday: solitude, separation, reading the word, practicing the presence of God, serving, witnessing, and making yourself available. All these, exercises, they help rebuild our immune system, because too often we leave the reading of the Bible to whoever's preaching on Sunday morning, and that's all the reading we get. Or we leave, the prayer life up to those who are up there on Sunday morning and ready to minister to us at the altar call. But what happens to the days when they don't make an altar call and there is no prayer for the sick and no prayer for personal needs? What then? That means you went a whole week without reading, a whole week without having a prayer time or seeking, the presence of God. You're not seeking, but practicing the presence of God, just staying and just basking in His presence. Too often Christian life has become reactive and it's all about stuff. But I think if we study out the Bible, we can find many references to the core of God's communication to His creation is the fact that He would love to just fellowship with us, just have us bask in His presence, and that's why the Apostle John got to receive such a high commendation, because he's normally known as the one who laid his head on the chest of Jesus. And that's like any father. They love for their children to come and just, lay on them, fellowship with them, just with no reason to, come and ask for stuff and things like that. And then yesterday, as we closed out on Galatians chapter 6 and said we must work while there's time and there's opportunity. And if you look at the circumstances that we are living in today, or you look globally at the different things that are happening that are also spoken of in the Word of God, you can clearly see that we are in a final stretch. We are in a end zone or a red zone place. And as a result of that, once we have this, firm assurance or conviction that this is, that red zone, and we need to make sure that we can come away with a win rather than fumble the ball again in the red zone. But Galatians, Paul is talking to the church at Galatia, and he really not scolds them, but he's very strong here. He says, "And let us not grow weary while doing good. For in due season we shall reap if we faint not, or if we do not lose heart. Let us not grow weary." Earlier on in the week or last week, I made mention of this. We are called into an environment as lights, as people of light, into a very dark place and a dark time. And regardless of whether we like or whether we don't like, or personal wishes and personal desires, set that aside. We have to get to the place where we realize that we are definitely, in an environment that we just got to keep on keeping on. I made this analogy earlier. I said, a bird is called to fly, and so a bird flies. It just keeps flying. Whether there's war going on down there, there's no food down there, it just keeps flying. It does what it was called to do. And so too with believers, we are called to fulfill the purpose of the Lord in the earth, but we're also called to a destiny in the Lord, which includes His purpose for our lives. So we got to realize that there'll be bad times. Not everything's going to be good around us, because we've got a lot of bad people and a lot of bad negativity around us. However, because there's so much negativity and so much darkness, doesn't mean we must shrink back and abdicate our role as light. No, we still got to press through. We still got to continue on in as the light of the world carriers. And that's how, when Paul's addressing the Galatian church, he's making a reference here that, in spite of what's going on, don't get weary, just keep doing. Because if you keep doing what God has called you to do, and what you know to do is right, good, and healthy, you shall reap. And the same can be said on the opposite side of the scale. If you continue to do bad and wicked and evil, you shall reap. If you continue down that road, there is an end. The Bible says, the soul that sinneth shall surely die. The wages of sin is death. If you keep working at sin, you will collect a wage, and that wage is death. But let's go on to listen to what Jesus has to say in John chapter 9 and verse 4. He says, "I must work the works of him who sent me." This is Jesus. His Father sent him to earth. He is on a mission. He has a mandate. And he says, "I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day." Why? Because there's a night coming when no man can work. And he knew that there was a very dark night that would come upon him, and he needed to fulfill the purpose for which he came. We can work most effectively within the frameworks or the structure of a local congregation. And let me just set a commendation here for the local church. The local church sometimes is not given, the kind of credit and the kind of honor it deserves, because the local church is from where God works outward. Everything starts there and goes out. And it's in that local church that people are nurtured, people are cared for, people are made to feel their love, people are made to feel special, people are made to understand their calling, their purpose, people are discipled. And the local church sometimes gets a bad rap. and people leave local churches and they go and they character assassinate. And yet, for so many who today have found perhaps their place in God, and they're calling in God, today they realize the early experiences they had in a local church was what set the trajectory. If they enjoy any greatness, if they enjoy any measure of success, it is started in that local church. Somebody believed in them. And I'm talking as one who came through a local church and understands the dynamics of a local church. Never understood it when I first got saved, but I later realized the local church is where things happen. It is an incubator for greatness. It is where people, if they understand their roles, if they understand their call, their purpose, they are then equipped, they are then empowered, they are then prepared for the ultimate launch of what God has called them to. But too often we see so many people giving the church a bad rep and making the church sound and making the church out to be, I can think of my own personal life. I grew up, came through a church that, was very evangelical or very evangelistic. And I still call that my home church. I love that church. And every time I go to South Africa, I look for an opportunity to meet with the senior pastor and any of the brothers. I love it. I love it because it's there that it's those people that recognize that I had something special. It was those people that took time. They made sacrifices to make sure I had the proper spiritual food infused into me, so that today, these many decades later, I am still standing because of the local church. But too often we are too quick to give the local church a bad rap. We betray our pastors, we betray our pastors' wives, our leaders, and we think that, listening to voices outside there that have all these promises for us, it's not a good, it doesn't end good. And I can tell you in my own ministry life, I've had many come through these hands of mine, and my wife and I, our love, our care, our comfort, our passion, and our sense of urgency for them to be all that they can be and develop them and give them the necessary tools and the necessary opportunities. But very few come back. Just like in the story of the parable with the talents, only one comes back to say thank you. And sadly, that is what goes on. But we must understand the effectiveness of working within the framework of the local church, fulfilling needed roles in evangelism, edification, benevolence. All these things, you can find in a local church. And so next time you feel tempted to speak ill or talk down about the local church you came from, or you need to be very careful, because you are where you are because of the initial seeds that were sown in you in the early local church when you first came to Christ. When we talk about, working within the framework of the local church provides effectivity, such as personal work, Bible teaching classes, ministering to the sick. I know, like in my own personal life, the church that raised me, the church that gave me, my initial understanding of being a Christian, being a disciple, being a follower, and then beyond that, following through on gifts that were emerging in my life and developing those gifts. I can gladly say, I'm thankful today because They're the ones that had leaders that took us every Sunday afternoon to a hospital. And there it was that we would pray for people with faith like you cannot believe. We'd go to a tuberculosis hospital and pray our hearts, have a full blown service, and then pray for everybody in that hospital. It's amazing how that hones you, how that builds you, how that forms you. And sadly, too many of us wait until we get to this age that I'm at and recognize that, oh my gosh, all these years I've been thinking that the local church sidelined me, or the local church wasn't good to me, whereas it's that local church that done the necessary work with us, giving us those Bible study classes, giving us those Wednesday middle of the week prayer meetings, mentioning names. While there's much work to do, and work is conducive to spiritual health, so is periodic rest. So in the context of rebuilding immune systems, spiritual immune systems, we have to understand in all of this, it's a full package deal. Yes, getting back into the flow of things and working the word so that the word can start to work in you, studying, meditating, practicing the presence of God, solitude, separation from, just being quiet, fasting and praying. All these exercises are necessary. However, one of the exercises that really gets mentioned is the exercise of periodic rest. Periodic rest is ultra important to rebuilding of our immune system, our spiritual immune system. Rebuilding of the spiritual immune system when you've been beaten down, when you've really taken a spiritual attack that has left you rattled spiritually. We need to know that God has got our backs. Energies and resources need replenishing, like you have to sleep every day so that your physical resources are renewed, restored, refreshed. So too with spiritual life and our spiritual journey, we need that periodic rest. It's good to have Norma with us, Alvarez. We bless God for you today. Thank you for finding us on YouTube. We're talking about spiritual immune systems that sometimes are really beaten down through lack of prayer, lack of Bible reading, lack of fellowship, lack of practicing the presence of God, and all these things that make up a healthy, productive believer. When that happens, we have to find a prescription to get back to God health, a healthy God life. And so we've covered several. You can go back on the history of this particular platform, YouTube or our Facebook, same 1010 Facebook. You'll find all these teachings. These are the morning devotional lessons we do every morning at 10 a.m. Canadian Central Standard Time, which is, different times in different parts of the world. Not sure where you're checking in from, but I'm glad to have you with us. We're talking about one of the spiritual exercises for rebuilding our spiritual immune system is rest. Rest is something that a lot of Christians on the opposite side of the scale. Now, we pretty much talked about those that are on the side of the scale that have not been actively involved in ministry or in the work of the Lord or serving or, prayer and intercession or this worship team or whatever area you involved in, children's ministry, youth, the whole, thing. But now we're going to begin to unpack why periodic rest is necessary. Because just like in the natural, the physical body needs periodic rest. We go a whole day, but we need to sleep because why? We need to recharge our physical energy, and we need to replenish what we've poured out throughout the day. So I want to leave that there, and we'll come back tomorrow and pick up from there and do our next devotional. But we have a whole list of devotionals on our platform. Feel free to use them. Feel free to share them. They have no price attached to them. Freely the Lord has made it possible for us to receive, and so freely we want everybody to receive. So let me close with this thought. When much productive work has been done, we need rejuvenation to continue the work of the Lord. In the physical, in the natural, first we see that. In the spiritual, it also needs to happen. We must stop and sharpen our axe heads. Otherwise, we become exhausted, we become blunt, and we suffer what is come to be known today as burnout. And nobody wants to go down the road of burnout. A lot of people are operating in ministry, and a lot of people are on this spiritual journey and don't have any concept that they're operating in burnout. Some of them, it's too late by the time they recognize this is the symptoms of burnout. They've become so disenchanted, so depressed, so discouraged. They don't want to have anything to do with the things of God anymore. And so many men and women have left the ministry because of burnout. But we'll cover more of that tomorrow. We'll look at Mark chapter 6, verses 30 and 31. The apostles gathered to Jesus and told him all things, both what they had done and what they had taught. And Jesus said to them, "Come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while." So there is the key. You can go run a crusade, run a campaign 7 days straight. 7 days after 7 days, you can preach a whole month. But there comes a time where you need to just take a break and just stay before God so God can, fill you again, replenish you in what you've poured out. But sadly, too many. Hello, Sharam. Good to have you with us. Again, not sure where you all are checking in from, but good to have you. We are talking about a prescription for God health. We have prescriptions for good health. We have all the clinical health people. We have the naturopathic people sharing online all their ways that you can, get the ultimate best physique, best body, best, brain, best looks, all these kind of things. But very few people are out there talking about spiritual health or the prescription for God health. So join me again tomorrow at the same time, that is 10 o'clock Canadian Standard Time, 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Canadian Standard Time, or if it's too late for you at your leisure, at your pace, you can go on our Facebook page, our Instagram page, and you can take any of the material there and follow along. If you want to catch up with where we are, we've already started down this road for several days now. But we have a lot of material there. It is free. God bless you and God keep you. Have a great day.